everyone, it's Leanne. Welcome to another video on my channel. For today's video, I'm doing a card, birthday card for my mom. A sweet little Birdie birthday card. This is using the Tweety Pie stamp set from the Greeting Farm. So I have an A2 size card, side folded, just a basic card, a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock, and this is the stamp set here. This is Tweety Pie. This is so cute. I love birds, and I love this stamp set. I'm going to use the Sentiment from the Lawn Fawn Jump for Joy stamp set here for the happy birthday part of the sentiment. So I'll mask that out with my stamping. And I'm going to do my stamping with Memento Tuxedo Black ink there, that ink pad, because I will be doing Copic coloring. So I'm going to do my stamping first. So I'm just taping this down with Post-it tape just to hold it in place so that when I stamp it, it doesn't lift up. And I'm going to start positioning my elements just to make sure that I know my spacing. I like to do this before I start my card. Usually by the time I get to this point in my card making, I've already thought about the design I want to do, and so I just want to make sure it's going to work in the space that I have. So I just roughly place the elements, everything looks good, so I'm going to start stamping. What I like to do when I'm stamping the elements for a card, I like to work with the biggest item first. And so that is the branch with the leaves. And I find that that helps ground the scene, and then everything else I can build around it and get better spacing that way. If I started with a smaller element, or if I started in a top corner, then I might run out of room or have too much room left over, that sort of thing. So I find it works best if you stamp with your biggest element first and then work out from there. So I'm stamping my little birdie, getting him just so, or her, so her little feet are just touching that branch. And that's the good thing about clear stamps, is you can see exactly where you're putting them, which is awesome. I remember the days when I used to use woodblock stamps, and it was just a free-for-all. You just guess where it's landing and hope that it went in the right position, and it wasn't always the case. So clear stamps are very awesome for that. So I'm going to do some light coloring. I'm coming in with my Copics, as I mentioned, and I just want to keep this really girly and light, and pinks and purples, really bright, light colors. So I'm doing a shade of pink here, and I also used my colorless blender on the belly. So when I was coloring the bird, I used this same pink, and I wanted to fade it to white, so that's why I brought in the colorless blender, just to keep the little chest area lighter than the rest of the feathers. And then to enhance the shadows, I'm coming in with a little bit of lavender here. I'll put all the Copic colors that I use in the description below, so you can see the exact color numbers, and then I'll put links to them too if you want to check them out. So here I have the base colored, and then I'm just working up the shadows. I like to do this in layers, and so I can see where I feel that it needs a little more depth, where parts of the bird might curve back farther or be in shadow more, and so I just keep layering and adding. And I think I was just really enjoying coloring the day that I made this, because I kept coming in with a whole bunch of different colors and just really working those Copics. I had a lot of fun. I was just sitting at my art desk and just enjoying the process. So I did add a few more colors that might not have been necessary, but I have really enjoyed making this. So again, as I kept going through, I kept adding more layers and just deciding where I thought the deepest parts of the shadows were. And when you're doing Copic coloring, the more darkness you add in those shadows, the more your images will pop or look more rounded or 3D. I mean, you can do the opposite too. You can just keep very light washes and make it more cartoony. I really like the 3D look though, so I like to add those rich, deep shadows and those really bright highlights. So I came in on the chest and added some R20. So once I was done coloring the bird, I felt that everything was just too pink, and I wanted the chest to feel a little bit different color-wise than the rest of the feathers. So adding that R20 just gave it a little bit of a warm wash, because it's more of a peach base than a pink base. And so now I'm coming in with some of my favorite colors, the BG series, and coloring the leaves. So instead of doing just a conventional green, I like to kind of mix it up and pick colors that I think are just pretty. There is no rhyme or reason. Leaves aren't blue-green usually. But I just decided to do some fun colors here when I was coloring this. So this is, the BGs are my favorite colors. And so I thought they would look really nice with the pinks. And so I'm just having some fun here, Now I find that the BG10, I think it is that I'm using, is really light, and then the BG45, I think that is really dark. I don't have an in-between color, so I just do the tip-to-tip method. So I wash it with my lightest color, that BG10, and then you can see I'm touching the tips there of the marker. I'm taking the lightest marker and touching it to the tip of the darkest marker, and then just brushing that lightest marker down with that darker ink on the nib. And so it creates a nice shadow, and it creates an in-between color. So that's a secret too, if you're missing an in-between color, and or if, you know, it's a way to make your markers go farther too. If you don't have a lot of colors to choose from or that sort of thing, then this is great to do in a pinch. And so just to richen those shadows, I'm bringing in this color, the blue here, and with that blue color, it just adds a little more interest too. To carry through the BG and the pinks, I'm doing this in the little heart under the sentiment as well. And so you can see I'm coming back in with the bird one more time, just darkening up that shadow, just making it a little more richer, a little more deeper. And so now I'm going to do the sky. So I'm going to put a piece of paper underneath the top of the background. I want to do the sky off from the edge, and so I just want to catch that overhang of the marker. So this is the BG10 as well. It's super light. I wanted something really light to put in the sky. And then this way too, it kind of ties in the leaf color and grounds the scene a little bit more. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking light wisps of the marker and pulling down from the top of the page and then lifting as I make the stroke. So it kind of fades into the background. I didn't use any colorless blender on this. I just tried to even out my strokes all the way across. And I did 2 layers just to make sure that I had an even distribution of those little swishes of ink. And so now I'm coming back in with some pink because I felt that the blues were just too blue, and I wanted to add a little more interest to them. I liked what was happening with the colors in the heart underneath the sentiment. They were a blue and a pink mixed together, and they looked really pretty. So I wanted to bring in some of that interesting color. So adding some pink to these blue greens just kind of gave it a little bit more interest, made it a little bit more unique looking. And it helped to emphasize the shadows a bit more too. So I'm not using a lot of this color, just dropping it in the center of the leaves, the base of the leaves, and just giving it a touch of that color, not too much. So I'm really happy with the way this is looking, and it's kind of marrying all the elements together, whereas the bird is the sole pink item on the page, so it becomes the focal point. And then I'm just adding a little more of that pink in the shadows of the branches here too. I find that when I lay it on top of the blue, it adds a little bit of a darker color when those colors are mixed together, so just bumping up those shadows too. And so I came back in with the yellow just to warm up that belly just a little bit, so it would look a little bit more distinctive between that and the color of the feathers. So I'm going to use this dot paper here. This is just loose leaf scrapbook paper that I picked up from Michael's, and I just had a spare piece in my drawer. I thought the yellow would be a nice complement to the colors that I used in the scene. Now I'm going to decorate the edge here with some glitter, and so I have some craft glue. And I just have some glitter that I picked up at the dollar store, and I thought that the blue that I chose here matched kind of the blue green. So I thought that was a nice close match and would add a nice enhancement around the edge. So I have a piece of white paper underneath here folded, and I'm just sprinkling out the glitter and trying to make it a little bit even along that crease line. Now I'm going to run a bead of the craft glue, and I'm going to dip each edge of the artwork into the craft glue and then into the glitter. So by doing it this way, it makes a nice even trim edge. If I tried to put the glue on the edge and spread it, it would definitely have hills and bumps and curves on the line. It would not be a fluid straight line. So I find that this is the best method to just get a nice even trim edge. So I basically just tipped the paper into the glue to start, and I find that if I drag it into the glue a little bit too and then bounce it up and down, then it gets a nice even edge of glue on that paper. And then I do the same thing when I bring it into the sparkles. I just set it in straight and then try to drag it a little bit back and forth to make sure that the coverage of the glitter is getting all on the glue. So I've set that aside to dry, and I'm just going to tip the paper and put the rest of the glitter back in the case. So I'm going to work on my card while the main artwork dries. I'm going to put this dot paper onto my card base. So I'm going to use my tape runner here. This is my 3M tape roller, and I love this. This is really awesome. So I like to rim the edges and then do an X down the center. Now I'm matching up the folded edges. I've cut the dot paper a little bit bigger so I can trim that to the exact size of my card. When you're lining this up, don't line it up at the top corner. Always line it up at the folded edge, because you can trim your cut edges, but you can't trim the folded edge because your card would fall apart. So I always like to make sure that if it's straight on that folded edge, then I can fix anything else with a ruler and an X-Acto knife. So here I'm just cutting off the overhang, and I get a nice flush straight cut. And so you can't see the difference of where my back is attached and the card starts. And so I have this all trimmed up. So that was nice and easy, super quick, and the background is all ready. So now I have my artwork dry, and I'm going to put this on with some foam tape. So usually what I like to do is put opposite directions on each corner and then put a piece in the middle. Because this is such a large piece, I don't want it to sag in the center on the card. So just a supporting piece in the middle as well. And then to position, I like to use my X-Acto knife so that I can keep my hands out of the way and see the edges. I like to look at the negative space around the edge and make sure that that's even. It's a smaller space to look at to make sure it's center. And then I'll push it down into place. And I have this little package of random sequins, I guess. And so I'm going to use some of these to put on my card too. I'm picking some warm colors. I have some yellows and some peaches. That pulls in the background, and it pulls in the chest color of the little birdie. So I put a little bit of craft glue on a scrap piece of paper there at the side, and I just dip my knife in the glue, just get a little bit on it, just a little bead, and then dip it into a piece of glitter or a sequin and just put it down on the card. So this is always fun, and I can totally get carried away with adding sequins. I could do this forever. It's kind of hypnotic. You get involved in doing it, and you just kind of lose track of what you're doing, and it's really fun, super fun. And it adds a little bit of interest to the card too. So there's the finished card. This is all done. It was mostly a coloring card. I had so much fun creating this. I really enjoyed working with the Copic markers, and my mom loved the card, so it was awesome. And there's a final look at the card there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified as I post more videos to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.